Good day. It is April 25th, 2025, and we are finally starting to show some real warming around the state. I know the area in Cleveland yesterday, we were around the 80-degree mark, blue skies, and felt almost like summer. Grass growth on the home lawn end of it has definitely started to jump, and I would expect that soil temperatures are starting to pick up speed. I know for any of the teaching faculty at OSU, we are getting towards the end of the semester, as it's the final exams, and so the changeover is occurring, and students will be out at their various internships in the near future. Online today, we got Dr. Dave Gardner, Dr. Dave Shetlar, Dr. Tyler Carr, and Todd Hicks. Dr. Gardner, a weed update.
All right, good morning, everybody. So this picture was taken 1 year ago today, and because of the cold snap that we had at the start of April, crabgrass is not quite to this stage yet, except for maybe areas near landscaping beds, south-facing slopes, around sidewalks, etc., heat sinks. But my point was saying this is that if you were thinking about putting out a pre-emergence herbicide now, I maybe wouldn't, with the exception of a liquid formulation of dithiopyr. Remember, the granular formulation doesn't have post-emergence activity, but the liquid formulation does up to 2 leaf stage. And then alternatively, you could consider an application of quinclorac tank mixed with prodiamine. That's actually effective up until about June 1st, and not a bad strategy in areas where you had a heavy infestation of crabgrass last year, because that allows you to take out the leaf stage crabgrass that you might have during the month of May. Quinclorac is quite effective for that, and then you get the pre-emerge out late enough that chances of it breaking down before crabgrass is done germinating becomes really, really small. Just if you go too late, then that might actually interfere with fall overseeding efforts, but otherwise it's a pretty sound strategy. Now, if you see this guy, I was taking a walk on the Olentangy Trail this week, and it's all over the place, but you see it occasionally in turf too. So lesser celandine. Remember, the best way to get rid of that if you see it in turf is to spend the time just digging up the bulbs, and maybe don't plant them somewhere else, because it is an invasive species, even though the flower is kind of pretty. You can try glyphosate, which isn't great in turf. There are a couple of selective options, but we're still at that point, and I've been saying this for 5 years now, where we don't see enough of an infestation in turf grass that we can do like test plots to see what the best herbicide is to control that, to give a more sound recommendation. But for now, the conventional wisdom is to find a combination herbicide that contains triclopyr and dicamba preferably, and then also MCPA. So at least 2 of those 3 active ingredients. So probably you're turning your attention now to post-emergence broadleaf herbicides, round 2, as it were. And just a reminder that that weed on the left is buckhorn plantain, and that's one that we've seen some resistance issues with. And so if you spray a combination herbicide and you get great control of the dandelion and the clover and the broadleaf plantain, but not the buckhorn plantain, you might have resistance. And so that is something that you'll need to address with a different herbicide. If you have difficulty controlling wild violet, well, we just don't have particularly good options to control wild violet. Shout out again to GDD Tracker, offered by Michigan State University. What I'm showing here is a map that shows recommendations for which formulation of broadleaf herbicides to be using. And you see that for the majority of Ohio now, they're recommending that you switch over to amine formulations so that you don't cause adverse problems with nearby ornamentals, because of drift volatility and etc. If you have ground ivy, that's a particularly difficult weed to control. And, the thing about that is that sometimes with a 3-way herbicide, you can get away with getting good control. So these are graphs of actual data that I took when I put out a 3-way herbicide for a couple of years in a row. And you see that the first year the control was actually really good. The second year the control was really slow and then not that great. And then the third year it kind of like peaked, and the ground ivy started to regrow. And so sometimes a standard 3-way herbicide can work and sometimes not. And so a common question that I get is, can you spike a 3-way herbicide with triclopyr? And why, yes, you can. There is a section on the triclopyr label that will tell you how to do that, because for both wild violet and for ground ivy, triclopyr tends to be a more effective active ingredient. You can also consider using some of the four-way herbicides, those that contain a protox inhibitor. And I mentioned T-Zone and Speed Zone or 4-Speed XT on purpose here because they include both triclopyr and dicamba, so two herbicides that are a little bit more active on those weeds. Another option to consider is Shore Power for the ground ivy because of the flumioxazin that's in it. Just remember that you have to be careful with that particular product and only use it on grass that is green but not actively growing, and so preferably during the months of June through August. And so if you have trouble with ground ivy control, those are some options to consider. Ed, that's what I have for today.
Thank you, David. Todd Hicks, have you got anything on the disease and destruction front?
Well, good day, everyone. Been fairly quiet, Ed, as you well know. With this weather pattern, we're not seeing a whole lot of problems right now. If you've been following along with us, I reported 2 weeks, 3 weeks ago, we started to see a little bit of red thread and a touch of leaf spot. But with this favorable weather pattern, most of that has disappeared or become unnoticeable. I think, as Ed pointed out, that the turf is jumping out of the ground. For homeowners and high-cut turf, that means you're staying well ahead of any diseases that would cause a sightly problem where people would notice them. So we're not really seeing issues there. And on the professional side, I think that this weather pattern, as crazy as it has been, is being very beneficial to people staying on track with their spray regimes. So everyone seems to be out front of diseases and not getting a problem getting their applications out. So everything seems to be right in the world right now. Now, next cautionary note for me though is with this early warm up and lots of sun, as Ed pointed out, we've seen many days here, couple 2 or 3 days in 80+ degrees in central Ohio. We're scheduled, I think, for 2 or 3 more in the next 10 days or so. Soil temperatures are going to raise up to those areas that it's time to make those soil-borne fungicide applications. So if you're somebody that's worried or fought things like fairy ring or summer patch, you need to get ready to make those applications maybe a little bit earlier than you would normally make them. I don't really care what you're using or when you make the applications, but what I am concerned about is it seems to be there are people forgetting that that fight doesn't happen on the surface, it happens below the surface. So if you make an application and you're not watering it in, you've wasted a lot of money and you're doing nothing to prevent that disease. Make sure you water it in as soon as you get done spraying. Our fungicides are drying really fast, especially with this warmer temperatures. As soon as you exit that green or that tee or that area, wherever you're spraying, go ahead and let your irrigation run a cycle or a round or two. Get it watered in so it's down where it needs to go to make that fight. But that's about all I got right now, Ed. Things be really eerily quiet right now.
Of course, Todd, that now means that death and destruction is just coming around the corner in a train and we're all going to get destroyed. Thanks, Todd. That's great.
No, just another drought, something like that.
All right. Dr. Tyler Carr, what have we got for us?
Yeah, hey guys. I took a nice walk through my neighborhood. Or I like to take walks through my neighborhood, and it's very representative of all the kinds of things that we see at various times of the year. So, as Dr. Gardner mentioned, lots of different weeds showing up now. Lots of dandelions. If you haven't mowed for a week or so, that we're seeing some patchy turf with more dandelions and my dog, the back end, that's not his head, the back end of my dog popping up here and just patchy areas. Turf is starting to green up, but good mixes of perennial and annual weeds. We're also starting to see some areas with warm season turf. This is my neighborhood. You have a kind of a mix of warm and cool season turf, but you can see this warm season turf here, and it's kind of interesting to see a line in this area where maybe shade is playing a factor um, on some of these different species. Something else that I've noticed that if we have any warm season turf throughout the state, maybe on some athletic fields, this is probably winter kill. And in this area right here, there's a hillside. Um, and I noticed this back in January when there wasn't any snow cover that has kind of that, we say that tan is dormant, but gray is dead. And there's a lot of gray in here where, it could have dried out and had some desiccation, and we had some really cold temperatures. So a lot of people are trying to address some of these bare areas that they have, trying to recover them. It's good to see some of the practices that we recommend being seen in the real world. So people are reseeding areas and using some type of mulch, like a straw here. I'd personally like to see a little bit more straw on this area, but you can see that there's a little bit of seed starting to pop through, and the rain that we've gotten today hopefully gives it the moisture that it needs. I'm also seeing there was a large project that a neighbor had. I don't know if they put a pool in or something in the backyard. They did some hydro seeding, and we're seeing a lot of this on some roadsides near campus. I'll be interested to see this. This just happened within the last week. I'll be interested to see if this ends up actually fully establishing, and if we get some weather that is conducive for it, because you see these trees on both sides of this area, and this could be a pretty shady area and could struggle to fully establish. But this is kind of I knew this was a timing issue with construction likely, but last fall it was so dry that we had a hard time establishing a lot of turf. So hopefully we can at least get some turf cover down this spring, so that we're able to have the ecosystem services that turf provides during the summer. And then we can focus our efforts hopefully on a fall seeding with more available moisture for us. One thing that I noticed throughout this walk, and we kind of see this in clusters throughout the neighborhood, are lots of grass clippings being collected. Um, and it's almost like I think a social experiment could be done on, if your neighbors are collecting grass clippings, are you going to collect grass clippings? Because I would walk down one road and, 50% of the residents are collecting clippings, but you walk down a parallel street and no one is collecting grass clippings. And I know in Ohio we have laws that clippings cannot be put into landfills. And so a lot of these clippings are recycled and used for other purposes. But if we think about it from a turf grass standpoint, you're losing out on a lot of benefits and nutrients by removing these clippings. In a world where we're trying to reduce the amount of fertilizer we're putting out, removing these clippings ends up making it where if you want a good quality lawn, you may need to apply more fertilizer. So here's a fact sheet that we put out a couple years ago on lawn mowing, the link at the top. But I would just want to point out there's a section on here about returning clippings. And there's been some work done that says that collecting clippings, and so removing them, collecting clippings can remove nearly 3/4 of the nitrogen applied to the lawn. So that's a significant amount of nitrogen being lost. It does not contribute to thatch buildup. This is food for your microbes in your soil to feed on. So it can be very beneficial, and it is beneficial to keep these clippings on the lawn. If you're worried about the clippings creating a mess on the lawn, mow at a higher height or mow more frequently. These are ways that we can reduce that burden. Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Carr. And the other one will be to mow when it's dry, right? But that's always
Absolutely.
not convenient. One thing on the warm season grasses, Tyler, can you talk to homeowners a little bit about, when you would expect to see them start the warm season grasses starting to warm up or green up? Sorry.
Yeah. So in the Central Ohio area, I would expect sometime in mid-May and we're starting to see some greening up, but like really greening up in mid-May if we get some warmer temperatures. And I don't think there's a whole lot of worm season up in your area. But if there is, probably the end of May, and we're probably starting to see some good green up in the Cincinnati area. If we had some warmer temperatures like we've had the last couple of days, it'll really start kicking up. So May, and if it's really gray, into June.
We don't get much warm season in the Cleveland area, but where it does, you can see it from Google Earth. It stands out. Dr.
Yeah.
Shetlar.
First thing, I wanted to make a couple of comments. Dave Gardner talked about the plantain and the some of the difficulties with that. Just wanted to remind people, those that are supposedly eco-friendly, that the buckeye butterfly uses plantain as a host food. And so if you want buckeye butterflies, leave your plantains alone in the lawn. Also, Tyler, in my neighborhood, apparently there were a fair number of sump pump failures. And quite often those failures were due to the exit tube getting clogged up. So they have to dig those back up and lay a new exit tube for those. And so in my neighborhood, we're seeing some of that lawn destruction due to that also. And of course, the thing that worries me is what they're throwing on top of it appears to be a mix of annual ryegrass with some other stuff. And of course, the annual ryegrass comes popping up real fast, and everybody thinks it's great and wonderful until it decides to die out in the heat of the summer. So again, talk with the people and find out what they're putting down if they're reseeding those places. In the bug world, you probably may notice that Dr. Wu is not with us this morning. She's out fighting annual bluegrass weevil. And that rascal has moved real fast this spring, and you're probably more in the early curative stage for the annual bluegrass weevil, rather than thinking of prevention for the annual bluegrass weevil. Concerning the other critters, the bluegrass bill bug is still kind of dormant, though with this warm weather, some of the adults are up and moving around. They'll be laying eggs pretty soon. I usually look at the turf. When the turf starts to pump out some seed head stems, that is the prime egg laying period for the bluegrass billbug and the other billbugs that attack our turf grass. What I'm a little bit worried about is that I've been running my light trap over these last few days where we've had some warm temperatures where the nighttime temperatures are only getting down into the 60s. And surprisingly, I'm getting a fair number of black cutworms and common armyworms, not the fall armyworm, but the common armyworm in that light trap. And there's nothing in the field crops for both of those to lay their eggs on. Normally, they like to lay their eggs on seedling corn and some of the other spring grassy crops, and they're not out there. So they're going to look for something else, and fresh, green, lush turf grass can be the other thing. Now, neither one of those are probably much of a problem in high cut turf. But on golf courses, they can appear on the greens and tees and cause some problems there. So again, the warning to the professionals, especially in the golf course, get your celeprins down now to make sure that you can prevent caterpillar damage to those greens. You certainly don't want the birds out there working your green surfaces if there's caterpillars active in there. Other than that, it's still kind of a wait and see to see what goes on. A lot of people that I'm talking to in the lawn care are fairly disappointed with the imidacloprid products, the merits and so forth for their grub control. It all ties down to they're not reading the current literature that's being put out for that. We are recommending imidacloprid for white grub control, especially to be put down in probably the earliest would be mid-June through July. And at least in view, the originator imidacloprid used to be Bayer. They're recommending the full rate, or the 4/10 of a pound, not the 3/10 of a pound. So if you've had trouble with imidacloprid, go to the 4/10 of a pound active ingredient. Make that application from mid-June through July to get the maximum amount down for the grubs. Otherwise, if you're using clothianidin or arena, or if you're using acelepryn, those applications to get you grub control and probably bilk bug control can be made as early as May, which is coming up pretty quick. And those should have enough residual to last through to give you season-long grub control. And of course, if we got the acelepryn, that will also protect you. I'm kind of worried. We've had some cold snaps in the south, but probably not cold enough to take out the fall armyworm. So it may be that we're primed for a fall armyworm invasion in July. What's a little bit disturbing is that I did get one beat up fall armyworm adult in my light trap this week. So that means that they are flying, and they're getting picked up by some of the storm fronts that are coming north. So that's the gloom and doom from the bug world, Ed, and so hopefully people can get their timings right.
Thanks, Dave. That's real thrilling. Anything on the ABW as far as age and kind of variation across the state, Dave?
Again, I'll have to leave that to Shall We for next week, but my feeling is if you're in the northern third of the state and have annual bluegrass weevil, you can probably still get some preventive treatments down. But if you're in the middle part of the state down to Cincinnati, you need to be thinking about curative treatments. And again, those are posted. If you're not using Weevil Track or one of the other ones, I would strongly encourage you to get in with that, because we've got some good monitoring going on through the state, and they're keeping the postings of that on the Weevil Track program.
Hey Dave, I
All
had a
right.
question, and it's similar to, it seems like it's similar to Todd, what he was saying about irrigating after application. Can you speak on the importance of at least rainfall for
Right.
irrigation
Well,
following some of these?
the biggest issue is imidacloprid liquid application. We do know that if you apply a liquid imidacloprid and it dries on the leaf surface and is subjected to full sunlight for at least 1 day and possibly 2 days without getting watering in, you can probably lose 50% of the active ingredient to photodegradation. So that's a really important one. If you're using the granule, that's not as important, because the active ingredient will eventually work its way down through the canopy. And whenever there is irrigation or rainfall, it will come off of that granule and be okay. The rest of the insecticides, we don't have any perceived issues with either photodegradation or loss of the active ingredient.
Thank you, Dave. And one other follow-up question, Tyler. Interesting, the picture with the dandelion puffballs, how much further along you guys are in central Ohio versus where we are in Cleveland, because we're only getting the flowering component right now with the dandelions. With that, folks, we'll wrap it up. Thank you, everyone, for today's effort. We will be back again in 2 weeks, and depending on the weather progress, we may start to come with greater frequency along those lines. The one other thing, bent grasses are finally starting to wake up around us in Worcester, so I'd expect a little bit further along in Columbus. But that average soil temperature of 55 degrees is always a critical part to getting bent grass to wake up. So if you're kind of kicking rocks, frustrated right now, go look at soil temperatures. That'll give you a pretty good idea of where or how close you are to your bent grasses starting to wake up. Thank you. Dr. Carr, have you got that screen share with the email? There we go. So if you have questions, want to reach out to us, feel free. If you have questions about any of the pesticides mentioned, you're considering using them, and you have questions, Buckeye turf at osu.edu is going to be pretty critical. Some of these pesticides are requiring a professional license for application purposes. So caution is required. Thank you, folks, and we'll talk to you all soon.